Move the vehicle. Now. I don't care who you think you are. Officer Dale Pruitt is standing at the driver's side window of a black government-issue SUV, his knuckles white against the doorframe, his voice loud enough for the gas station attendant 20 feet away to stop and look. The woman behind the wheel does not flinch. She is in uniform, Army combat uniform, digital camouflage, Colonel's Eagle insignia on each shoulder, name tape above the right breast pocket. She has her window down halfway, and her hands visible on the wheel. "Sir," she says, and her voice is lower than his, and steadier. "I'm active duty military. I stopped to fuel this vehicle." Pruitt doesn't look at her insignia. "You're blocking the commercial lane. Get it moved, or I'm citing you." "Officer, I've been at this pump for 4 minutes. There's no one behind me." He reaches in. He does not ask. He wraps his hand around her forearm and pulls. "Out of the vehicle. You're being detained." She does not fight. She steps out with the same deliberate calm she uses when she steps onto a parade ground. Both hands visible, feet shoulder width. Everything exactly right. She counts the violations as they happen. 1, 2, 3. The way she has counted them her entire adult life. The way her mother taught her to. The way every black woman in America learns to count them if she wants to come home. A teenager near the air pump lifts his phone. He grins at his friend and says something neither of them will repeat later. An off-duty firefighter in a pickup truck cranes his neck, watching, and then looks away and studies his own steering wheel. A woman in her 60s, carrying 2 bags of groceries, slows, looks at the colonel, looks at the cop, and walks faster. Pruitt has her by the arm. He's walking her toward the hood of her own vehicle. He does not know her name. He does not know her rank. He does not know that the woman whose arm he is gripping right now is Brigadier General Celestine Adara Morrow, commander of Fort Calloway, the United States Army installation, whose main gate is 11 minutes from where they are standing. He has no idea. And in 47 minutes, every siren and headlight and government sedan in this county is going to arrive at this gas station. They just don't know it yet. But this story doesn't start here. Celestine Adara Morrow was born in Columbus, Ohio, the second of 4 children of Joseph and Grace Morrow. Joseph Morrow worked 29 years for the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, maintenance, then facilities management, then supervisor, a man who wore his ID badge until it faded to white, and who told his children the same thing every morning at the door: do the job so well, they have to write your name down. Grace Morrow worked nights for 18 of those years at a hospital laundry, coming home at 6 in the morning smelling of bleach, and folding her uniform for the next night before she slept. Celestine was the one who polished her father's shoes. She was 12 years old. She used a cloth, and she used patience, and she made sure the toe caps reflected light. On the dresser in her childhood bedroom, there was a triangular military flag case. Not a real one. Not yet. But one her father had bought at a flea market when she was 8 years old, because she had told him she was going to be a soldier. He had put it on her dresser and told her, "Someday, you'll earn the real one." She looked at it every morning until she left for West Point. She still has it. It sits on a shelf in her office at Fort Calloway, between her West Point diploma and a photo of her parents taken in 1987 in front of the same house on Tremont Avenue where her mother still lives today. She entered the United States Military Academy at age 18 with a congressional appointment, the first in her family to go to college, the first in her city's district to earn that appointment in a decade. She graduated 4th in her class. She was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. In the spring of the same year, her father retired with a certificate, a handshake, and a pension that barely covered his mortgage. He died the following February of a stroke, at home, in his chair, with the television on. She got the call during a training exercise in Georgia. She drove 4 hours in her uniform and walked into that house, and her mother was sitting at the kitchen table holding a dish towel she had been folding when it happened. He never saw what she became. He never had to. He already knew. Over the next 24 years, Celestine Morrow served in 5 overseas deployments, commanded battalions in 3 of them, received the Bronze Star with Valor Device, completed the Army War College, was promoted to colonel ahead of schedule, and 6 months ago was pinned with a 2nd star, the youngest black woman ever to reach the rank of Brigadier General in the United States Army. She commands a base of 12,400 soldiers, 3,000 civilian employees, and a budget that exceeds the annual operating expenditures of the city she is standing in right now. She had been visiting her mother, Grace Morrow, age 69, living in the same house on Tremont Avenue, watching the same channel on the same television, and stopped for gas on her way back to base. That is all. She was stopping for gas. She was doing nothing unusual, nothing threatening, nothing that anyone would have questioned if she had looked different. Officer Dale Pruitt, meanwhile, had been with the Callaway City Police Department for 11 years. He had 3 commendations. He had been named Officer of the Year in 2019. A laminated certificate in his locker he still mentioned when he met people. He had a collection of 22 complaints filed against him over 11 years. Complaints that described him pulling over drivers for no clear reason, using force that witnesses described as disproportionate, making statements that caused at least 4 complainants to write the same phrase in their reports. He said exactly what he thought of people like me. The complaints were reviewed by the department's Internal Affairs Division, which was housed in the same wing as Pruitt's watch captain, and reported to the same deputy chief who had attended Pruitt's Officer of the Year ceremony twice. Every complaint was closed. Every file sat in a drawer. The drawer had a lock. He had no idea the woman he was pulling out of a government vehicle had the authority to shut down roads within a 5-mile radius of her installation, request federal law enforcement coordination, and, if she chose, make a phone call that would result in the Callaway City Police Department receiving a formal letter from the Department of the Army before sunset. She didn't make that call. Not yet. In a beige Accord 1 block away, her aide-de-camp, Captain Yolanda Ferris, watched what was happening through the windshield and picked up her phone. She did not panic. She pressed record on the passenger side camera she had been trained to activate in exactly this situation. Then she sent 3 messages. She had been trained for this too. Captain Ferris had worked with General Morrow for 14 months. She had watched her general walk into rooms full of men twice her age and twice her rank and speak until the room changed its mind. She had driven behind her in precisely this vehicle through this city on this road every week since her assignment. She had thought about this scenario before. She had her contacts in order. 39 minutes. Pruitt had the general against the hood of the SUV. He was not reading her rights. He was not explaining a charge. He was writing something in his notebook that, later, his union representative would describe as preliminary documentation, and that Pruitt himself would describe, in a formal deposition, as a citation he had every lawful right to issue. Name, he said. Morrow. She spelled it once, clearly first name. Celestine. He wrote it incorrectly. He continued writing. She did not correct him. She noted that he had not produced a badge number, had not stated a reason for the detention, and had initiated physical contact before issuing any verbal command or explaining any legal basis. She counted these things the way her mother had taught her to count them. She counted them silently, without expression, the way you count something you intend to document. Inside the gas station, the attendant, a man named Raymond Diaz, who had worked the morning shift for 7 years, had watched the entire sequence from the moment the officer's cruiser pulled into the lot. He had seen the officer ignore two other cars at the pumps and approach the black government SUV. He had seen him pull the woman out. He had seen the insignia on her uniform. He did not know what a colonel's eagle meant, but he knew it meant something, and he had thought, "This is not right." He did not go outside. He turned on the security system's external camera recording function and stood where he could see the lot through the window. 28 minutes. In an office at Fort Calloway, Staff Judge Advocate Colonel Dennis Park received a text from Yolanda Ferris that read, "General M. detained. Gas station, Route 12 in Hollister. Recording active. Advise." He read it twice. He stood up from his desk and walked to his window, which faced the main gate. He thought for 4 seconds. He picked up his desk phone and made 2 calls. Back at the pump, Pruitt had finished writing. He tore something from his pad. He held it out toward General Morrow. "Citation for blocking a commercial fuel lane. Sign here, acknowledging receipt." She looked at the paper. She looked at him. "I'd like your badge number, please. It's on the citation. I'd like you to state it verbally." Pruitt's jaw tightened. He said the number. She filed it. "I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle until this is processed." "Am I under arrest?" A pause. "You're being detained pending verification of the vehicle's registration. The vehicle is registered to the United States Army. The registration is in the glove box. I can retrieve it. You will not reach into the vehicle." She did not reach into the vehicle. She stood where she was. Her spine was straight. Her hands were still. She looked at nothing in particular, with the expression of a person who has decided what this moment is, what it means, and what they will do about it afterward, and is now simply waiting for it to be over. She was the calmest person in the lot. 17 minutes. Pruitt was on his radio. He'd called for backup. Not because the situation required it, but because the woman wasn't giving him what he wanted, which was deference, which was an apology, which was a performance of smallness that would let him feel, afterward, that this had resolved the way he expected. She was not providing that. He found this aggravating. He told dispatch he had a detained subject, possible fraudulent government plates, and requested a second unit. He was also certain she was lying. That certainty, unquestioned, unexamined, held with the same confidence he brought to every stop he had made in 11 years, was the most important fact about him. Not his service record, not his commendations. That certainty. The certainty that what he saw matched what he believed, and that those two things were not different things. He posted to his personal Instagram at 11:14 a.m. The caption read, "Another Tuesday in this job." He would delete the post at 11:58 a.m., but not before it had been screenshot 400 times. Captain Ferris was on her second call. She had spoken with Colonel Park, who had spoken with the military police desk at Fort Calloway, who had run the plates on the SUV, which required approximately 45 seconds, and confirmed that the vehicle was registered to the United States Army and assigned to the commanding general's office. Colonel Park had made a third call. He was a careful man, and a precise one, and he had spent his career understanding that documentation wins. Emotion loses. Evidence is everything. 9 minutes. Pruitt's backup arrived. Officer Sarah Garland, 4 years on the force, pulled her cruiser to the edge of the lot and walked toward him. She looked at the woman in uniform against the hood. She looked at the insignia. She looked at Pruitt. She said, quietly, "Dale." What did she do? Blocking commercial lane. Not cooperating. Garland looked at the pump. There was no one behind the SUV. There had been no one behind the SUV for as long as she could verify. She said nothing more. She stood 2 feet behind Pruitt and was aware, in a way she would later describe in her transfer request as impossible to ignore, that something was deeply wrong with what she was seeing, and that she was standing in the wrong place to say so. 4 minutes. She heard it before she saw it. General Morrow heard it too. A sound that anyone who has spent time near a military base recognizes without thinking. The particular engine tone of government vehicles moving in coordinated convoy. 3 black sedans came off Route 12 and turned into the gas station lot. Behind them, a Humvee with military police markings. 2 military police officers stepped out. Colonel Dennis Park stepped out of the lead sedan, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the pump. He stopped 6 feet from Pruitt. He produced his identification. Colonel Dennis Park, United States Army, Staff Judge Advocate, Fort Calloway. I'm here regarding a detained individual. He looked at the general. Ma'am. Dennis, she said. Pruitt looked at Park, looked at the vehicles, looked at the insignia on the woman he had just cited for blocking a commercial fuel lane. He looked at the eagles on her shoulders, the 2 stars above them which he had not processed before, or had processed and dismissed, and had now to reckon with in front of 3 military police officers, a fellow cop, a gas station full of cameras, and a phone pressed against a car window across the street that had been recording for 41 minutes. The color left his face. He stepped back, his mouth opened. General Celestine Morrow straightened. She tugged the bottom edge of her jacket level. She looked at Dale Pruitt with the expression of someone who has been very patient for a very long time and has decided this moment will be the last time she has to be. My name is Brigadier General Celestine Adara Morrow. I command Fort Calloway. The vehicle behind me is registered to the United States Army and has been verified by military police within the last 6 minutes. I have not blocked any commercial lane. I was not resisting. I was not creating a disturbance. She paused. What I was doing was stopping for gas on my way back from visiting my mother. That is all. She looked at the citation in her hand. I wrote the policy framework that your department's de-escalation training references. My legal team helped draft it. I know it by name, and I know what it requires, and I know what occurred here instead. She set the citation on the hood of the SUV. This is your department's problem now, not mine. She turned to Colonel Park. Let's go. Pruitt stood in the lot while General Morrow got into the passenger seat of Colonel Park's sedan. He stood there while the Humvee and the 2 other sedans pulled out after it. He stood there while Officer Garland walked back to her cruiser without speaking to him. He stood there while Raymond Diaz, behind the gas station window, turned off the external camera recording and wrote down the time. He stood there for a long time. What happened next happened quickly, and in every direction at once. Captain Yolanda Ferris's footage was reviewed by the Fort Calloway Public Affairs Office by noon. By 2:30 p.m., the Calloway City Police Department's Chief of Police, Margaret Elam, had received a call from the office of the base commander. At 3:00 p.m., she had watched the footage 3 times. At 4 p.m., she had pulled Pruitt's personnel file and read it, the commendations, and the 22 complaints that sat behind them, and the signatures on the closure documents, and the name of the deputy chief who had signed all 22 of them. Pruitt was placed on administrative leave without pay by 5:15 p.m. The union representative arrived at 5:40. By 6 p.m., the footage had been obtained by 2 local news stations through public records requests that had already been filed. By 8 p.m., it had 1.1 million views. By midnight, it had 3 times that. The Department of the Army sent a formal letter of inquiry to the Calloway City Police Department on the following Monday. The letter requested documentation of all prior complaints against the officer involved, all supervisory reviews, and all training records. It was co-signed by a representative from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, which had opened a pattern or practice review of the Callaway City Police Department 4 days later. Deputy Chief Franklin Morse, who had signed all 22 complaint closures, submitted his retirement paperwork before the federal review began. His attorney issued a statement. The statement was not well received. The 22 complaint files were unsealed. 3 of them described incidents materially similar to what had occurred at the gas station on Route 12. 2 of those 3 complainants had filed follow-up appeals that had never been answered. One of them was a woman who had been a registered nurse at the time of her incident and is now a physician. When the files were unsealed, she called a reporter. That interview ran on a Thursday and was shared by 600,000 people before Saturday. Raymond Diaz, the gas station attendant, was called by 2 television producers that week. He declined both. He gave his security footage voluntarily to federal investigators. He asked for nothing in return. Officer Sarah Garland filed a transfer request to the department's Community Affairs Unit and enrolled in a restorative justice certification program at the county college. Her request was approved. She has not spoken publicly about that morning. She does not need to. What she did with her silence and what she did after is the only thing that will matter in 10 years. Dale Pruitt was terminated from the Callaway City Police Department 6 weeks after the incident. He was charged with unlawful detention and civil rights violations. His union contested the termination. The contest was resolved after the federal investigation produced 3 additional body camera recordings from prior incidents that the department had never shared with complainants. The union stopped contesting. He faces a civil lawsuit filed by 4 of the 22 prior complainants, who are now represented by a firm that took the case pro bono. At his termination hearing, Pruitt said he had been doing his job. His attorney said the same thing. The recording showed what his job had looked like for 11 years. General Celestine Morrow delivered remarks at Fort Callaway's annual awards ceremony 8 days after the incident. She did not mention Dale Pruitt. She did not mention the gas station. She spoke for 14 minutes about the obligation of every soldier to hold themselves to a standard that the institution could not enforce on its own, a standard that required them to understand fully who they were and what they were capable of. She paused near the end. I did not announce my rank when that officer approached me, she said. Some people have asked me why. The answer is this: because the next person he stops won't have one to announce. And if I have to say what I am in order to be treated like a human being, then the uniform doesn't mean what I've spent 26 years believing it means. She looked at the assembled soldiers. I know what it means. So do you. Act accordingly. Colonel Dennis Park was promoted to Brigadier General the following spring. His promotion ceremony was brief and formal, and exactly what he would have wanted. Captain Yolanda Ferris received a commendation for actions during the incident, specifically for documentation, judgment, and rapid coordination under adverse conditions. She framed it and put it next to a photograph of her general, taken at West Point, that she had printed from the Army's Public Affairs Archive. The photograph shows a young Celestine Morrow in her dress uniform, standing straight, looking at something outside the frame. It looks like she is looking at something far away that she has already decided is hers. The gas station on Route 12 and Hollister still operates. Raymond Diaz still works the morning shift. He has a small laminated card near his register now, printed in his own handwriting, that lists the number for the County Public Defender's Office. He put it there the week after the investigation concluded. He has not been asked about it. He has not explained it. If someone asks, he will. Grace Morrow, age 69, watches the same channel on the same television in the house on Tremont Avenue. She was told about what happened at the gas station by her daughter, on the phone, the night it happened. There was a long silence on her end of the line. Then she said, "Your father would have said your name out loud in front of witnesses," and waited. Celestine was quiet for a moment. "I know, Mama," she said. "I know. She is still commanding Fort Calloway. She is still the youngest black woman to hold that rank in the history of the United States Army. She drives through the gate on Monday mornings before most of her staff arrive. She stops for gas on Route 12. Someone has to be watching. She made sure of it." If you stayed with this story to the end, if something in it made you feel something that you needed to sit with, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the system that kept 22 complaint files in a locked drawer does not change itself. It changes because people like you refuse to let it be forgotten. Drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed something wrong and said nothing, and then had to decide who you were going to be afterward? We want to hear from you. Subscribe for more stories about real people who refuse to accept what they were told to accept. Because every view is a vote for accountability. And every share is a witness.